Welcome back, avid readers. Thanks for stopping back in. Today, I want to do something a little bit different from our regular book reviews. It got me thinking last week. You guys have seen maybe, I think 11 books that I've reviewed so far recently over the past few months. And I haven't really talked to you guys at all about how I choose a good book or how I rate a book and decide whether or not I think it's a good book. I give you a little synopsis at the end saying these are the couple of reasons why, but there's a lot more that goes into it than that. Now, I want to spend time today talking to you about 8 things that I think are important in deciding whether a book is interesting and what makes it great. Now, these are up for debate. I mean, you can do a Google search and find some of these things yourself. But most of these are, pretty good consensus between readers and the writing community of what should be, in a book that makes a book great and interesting and keeps you reading it. So I want to go through the 8 most important things I think today. So let's just get started. The first, I think, and then I'm not doing these in any particular order. I'm not ranking them or anything like that. These are just 8 things I think of. But the first one I want to cover is a strong opening. Now, what do I mean when I say a strong opening? I'm talking about when you open the book, does it capture you? Is it immediately asking you questions? Is there a mystery that's going to need to be solved throughout the book? A strong opening should create some kind of curiosity. It should have a hook that pulls you in, right? And it should also introduce something or someone important to the plot. It should start right off the bat trying to pull you in. And depending on, the certain type of book, readers will have expectations. Like a thriller should be having exciting action in the beginning pages right away, something that pulls you in. Romance should be setting up relationships between characters so you get invested in the relationship between your romantic couple later on. And I really truly believe the first few pages of a book can make or break it. It's the difference between you reading it in its entirety, or sometimes you just put it back on the shelf because it just doesn't sound that interesting. So having a strong opening is crucial. The second thing I want to talk about is what I would call powerful description. Now, what do I mean by that? The truth is, cadence and rhythm in writing matters. That's just a fact. There should be a flow that feels natural when you're reading something and writing it. I mean, these things all kind of apply to people who read books and write books. It's the same principles. Uh, Somebody who's writing a book will tend to use descriptions, and the idea of those descriptions is to really immerse your readers into the world that you're talking about, the world that you've created. I mean, think of Harry Potter. The descriptions in that book make you feel like the wizarding world is real, and that's what people who are reading books really want to go for. When the person who's written the book is painting a picture in your mind of what they're describing, in my opinion, they've done a great job of investing you in the story and making it more interesting to read. Of course, though, there's a fine line here. Sometimes you'll read information that really isn't relevant or crucial to the story. And I think details that don't further along the plot or any character development can actually really sink your story. So, I mean, I read books like that where they over explain and it's too much description trying to give you a feel for things, and I've got bored and I've actually stopped reading a book. So, of course, there's a balance as with everything. I also really like that often good descriptions will accompany point of view flips between characters. I love books that toggle perspectives between multiple characters because I like listening to each character describe things and getting instant insight really into how they think and see the world, and that's always a style of writing I found super compelling. And while we're talking about characters, we'll cover number 3, and that is what I would consider diverse and developed characters. Your character is going to make or break your story, for sure. You need to have characters that people want to root for or hate. I mean, good characters are written so you love them, you hate them, or you want to cheer for them and see them succeed. No two characters should be the same either, because people are unique. We need to humanize them. Characters should have flaws, just like people do. No one is perfect. And your character should evolve as the story goes on. Characters that are well developed and interesting are the ones that will keep you reading the book. And I know most writers will spend time developing backstories for each of their characters. They'll tell you, you know, through their writing, who they are, what do they value, what are their morals, where have they come from. And through the choices that the characters make throughout the book, you should see them evolve and change. And, it may not always be a good thing, but people, go bad, people develop negative attitudes through experiences, things like that. But the characters should evolve in one way or the other. That, having a strong, developed character with a backstory, makes for excellent writing and a great read. And while we're talking about characters, that brings me to the fourth point, and that is good and effective dialogue. Now, I've read books that have had great dialogue, really natural, it flows, and then I've read books where it feels like a kindergartner wrote it. Really, really bad, really unnatural. So, what do I mean when I say that, though? Good dialogue should tell me about the character, but it also should tell me something about the relationships between characters. You can pick up a lot of how characters, what it is between them just by how they talk to each other. Are they best friends? Do they hate each other? Do they not respect each other? Or is this person maybe a boss or somebody important in their life and they talk to them very formally with high amounts of respect? Dialogue is important, and it gives you clues into relationships between characters and also tells you more about the character themselves. And not just in the obvious sense of what they're saying, but it's how they say it. Dialogue should also add tension. It should add tension and conflict and further along the plot of the story. And it should also feel natural. Now, I hate, and this is, I feel like, a rookie mistake in writing and what authors do, if you repeatedly say the character's name in the dialogue itself. That's super clunky and super weird. When you're talking to somebody, you're not constantly saying their name in conversation. That is just super, super awkward, and it's it makes it's a huge turnoff. It makes it so I don't even want to read the book because it's not natural. I can't imagine the conversation that's going on between the characters anymore. And on top of that, small talk is the absolute worst. Small talk, I guess it kind of has a place if you're trying to make a character seem awkward, maybe. But if it's just adding dialogue for the sake of adding dialogue and it has nothing to do with the plot, terrible. Absolutely terrible. Dialogue should be sharp. It should be witty. And each character and the way they speak should be different. And it goes back to what I said before in the previous one with diverse characters. No two people are alike, so no two people are going to talk alike either. And the dialogue should reflect that. You should feel a different, change in tone, the way they speak, how they speak, when you're writing proper, good dialogue. So for number 5, we're moving on now. We're going to start talking about more the internal pieces of the story. And when I'm talking number 5, I'm saying strong internal story logic. What do I mean behind that? Well, a scene should make sense to the story as a whole. And actions and plots and things along those lines, and I'm talking maybe actions when I say character actions, we'll say that. They need to make sense. If my character is burning a bridge with a friend or making a huge life-altering decision, has the author set up a solid reason for me for why that's happening? When the story doesn't flow logically, it's really hard to follow. One of the easiest ways to lose a reader quickly is to make it confusing to understand what's going on. And there are some books out there that will jump in time. So they might do flashbacks or flash forwards and things like that. And I think that's a cool concept. Don't get me wrong. It can be done well. But like I said, if you've made it confusing to understand what's going on, you can't follow the pace of the story, where the story is, what time the story is. That's the quickest way for somebody to want to stop reading a book, because now you've lost their interest because they can't be invested in it. They're not feeling emotionally attached to the story because they're just confused. And along with that, I think when we're talking about the contents of a book and the plot of a book, that leads me to number 6. And that is a balance between tension and relief. And what do I mean by that? Think about maybe a thriller book you read or a mystery book. I mean, every book has a plot, right? And they have some source of conflict. They have some main storyline that needs resolution at the end of the book. But a good book, no, not even just a good book, great books will have mini resolutions along the way. And when I'm talking about that, they will reveal little bits of information to further the plot as it goes on. Maybe reveal, another piece of the puzzle, or, clue you into somebody that was involved before that wasn't. They'll keep cluing you in each bit as the story goes on, to keep you invested and keep you interested and make you feel like there's going to be some kind of resolution at the end. If a story is all doom and gloom all the time, you're going to lose a reader's attention. And that's just true. I mean, that it doesn't have to be just books. You can think about it in the context of a movie too, or a TV show. There's this one sci-fi TV show I watched maybe last year. And the whole show, the whole 2 seasons of it, from beginning to end, was just really depressing. It was just one bad thing happening at them, one after the other, nonstop. And you got no relief from all the bad things happening. And there were no happy moments mixed in with the bad things. And I lost interest. I finished it because I felt like I had to see it to the end. But not everybody's like that. You'll lose some people with that. If it's all just doom and gloom, you're not going to want to keep my attention with it. So some books unfortunately fall in that pattern. They forget to give you little mini resolutions along the way to keep you interested and keep it lighthearted. It's like a really serious movie. You need a break from the action and all the seriousness too. Giving people a chance to breathe, to go, okay, I'm catching my breath now. Moving on from that, let's talk to the next point. Number 7, that's a sense of originality. Maybe not my number one, but one of my pet peeves is cliches. I hate cliches. Think about this in the context of maybe movies you've seen that are also books. The book is usually a lot better, right? No, not in all cases, but usually the book is better than the movie. It has more detail. It might have more major plot points that they've kept out of the movie for the sake of time. I often ask myself, why are so many books turned into movies? And I think, this is just my personal opinion and theory, but I think it's because books are usually a great source of originality. Great books that are turned into movies are turned into movies because they have captivated a large audience and brought something to the table that hasn't been done before. I think great writers will have an amazing imagination, and they're going to leave you wanting more. And with that, leaving you wanting more, I want to touch on the last point. And this is maybe perhaps the most important. A book must have a satisfying conclusion. The first question I ask myself is, did the ending let me down? I know you all have read a book where it's ended and it left you feeling that you wanted your time back. To me, that's a terrible ending. If I finish a book and I'm not satisfied with how it ended, then I wouldn't recommend that book to people, and I really probably wouldn't read another book by that author. But then again, there are books that I finished and it's left that impact. I find myself thinking about this book over and over and over again and the contents with it, and it stayed with me. That is one of the signs of a great book. A book that will wrap up all of the plot points and do justice to the characters helps make a book great. If it has a satisfying ending and stays with you, I do think you're probably more likely to read another book by that author in the future. And I've definitely done that. An author has hooked me in with one book, And then all of a sudden, I maybe have gone back to the library or to the bookstore and I bought more by that author because I was so pleased with the first one I read. I think that's very common. So the ending is so important. You need to captivate your audience and give them a sense of satisfaction that they made it to that end of the book and every single plot point was at least buttoned up in some fashion. But that's it. Those are my 8 points. Now, I know you guys may not agree with everything, and I'd be interested to hear if you don't. I really would like to talk about these points. But these are the 8 things that I really feel are important, and these are the things that I actually take into consideration when I am giving a book review to you guys. I don't always cover all of these points, obviously, in my videos, but these things are definitely running in the back of my mind. I'm not just assigning some arbitrary rating when I give you guys the rating of the book at the end. I've taken pretty much all of this stuff into consideration, and it gives an overall feeling to me of how I feel about this book. So let me know what you think. Are there any points that you guys might add? Are there any that you would take away? Let me know what is important to you to make a book truly great. I'd love to hear it. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great weekend.